Season 1 explored how enterprise software is moving beyond disconnected systems, interfaces, and static workflows. But changing the architecture is only part of the work. The harder question is what happens when the old assumptions underneath hiring are still intact.
I think the biggest danger around this is you use AI and you apply it to processes that you already have, processes that may have not worked properly for some time, processes that are just there because we have to work around things because we can't do things in the way that we want to.
Episode 2 asks what recruiting is still treating as true. That jobs are fixed, resumes are reliable proxies, interviews reveal what matters, org charts describe how work really happens, buyers should start with feature checklists, and product design should keep improving the old workflow.
We've been telling ourselves outdated stories about recruitment for hundreds of years. But I think from a technology perspective, I think there's still a sense that technology is something that makes things more efficient or makes things quicker or changes resource allocations. I think that there is still a sense of looking at this as just another piece of technology development and it'll make us faster and more efficient. And the story is much, much bigger than that. My advice to people would be to take a step back and look at exactly why they do things the way they do them. And I think there are lots of questions that have never been asked, particularly about recruitment. Why do we do recruitment like this? Why do we have resumes? Why do we have interviews? And I think that they're the questions that we need to ask right now, because everything kind of needs to be stripped back so we can get a real sense of how do we do this in a way that is a win for everyone, is a win for the candidate, is a win for the recruiter, is a win for the employer, the hiring manager. And that's only going to happen if you ask those questions and take that pause and look at everything, because you really need to kind of redesign the way that you do things before you add AI to make them quicker or automate them or make them more intelligent or whatever that is.
If the old model of hiring is built on fixed jobs, fixed charts, and fixed responsibilities, then the first place to look is not the workflow. It is the work itself.
And so you're going through this integration at the moment, and I'm presuming a lot of the work is around how teams are structured and designed and those kind of things. We're at a point where AI is actually changing the way the work gets done. Mm-hmm. So how do you factor in? What does that do to the way you think about organizational design?
And so in my personal point of view, I think the org chart is actually gone. I think when you think about org design, you really need to think about what are the outcomes? What's the work that you need to actually produce? And then you're not necessarily confining people to a specific, job title or here's your day-to-day responsibilities, because those could ebb and flow and they could change. I think the work has changed. I think it's going to be a continuum on where people are at in that journey, and particularly if you think about the industry sector that they're coming from, right? But in particular, I do think that there's an opportunity for you to invite people into that conversation. So again, these are not necessarily like decisions that get made, they get pushed down, and all of a sudden people are just saying, my job is different. Like, again, inviting them in to say, if you could design something different, if you could remove something that you are basically blocked on today, what would that look like? And I think that that's where we're starting to have more of that conversation across the business.
If work is no longer fixed, product cannot stay fixed either. The design challenge is not just improving the old workflow, it is helping customers move toward a different one without simply preserving what no longer works.
The technology is moving faster than any of us can keep up with. If in fairness, it's just incredible to see how quickly things are changing. At the same time, we're talking about large enterprise organizations who can't really change very quickly, even however hard they try.
And when we think about it from an experience perspective, We want to make sure we don't keep designing for the old world, right? However, if we don't start aiming further ahead, we will also fall behind, right?
The same old world thinking shows up when companies buy technology. If the future is changing this quickly, the old checklist cannot be the first question.
How would you cut through it?
It's interesting because so many of our conversations with buyers, they want to start with a demo, right? Show me the product, show me what you can do, show me the features, can you do this? And my advice often to our sellers and to our reps is stop, right? Really pare back, understand what the business priorities are, understand what the challenges are, what are we trying to address, what are we trying to fix? And I'm not even talking about hiring business problems, right? I'm not talking about how we accelerate time to hire or how we improve the candidate experience. I'm talking about the big business issues that the C-suite is really motivated by. So my advice to any buyer is don't get hung up on features and specs and seeing the demo. Really go back and inspect what your business priorities are first and start there. And then we can have a much more meaningful conversation about how we can help address some of those priorities. So we're just accelerating the pace of innovation. So you're absolutely right. And that's almost why buyers really need to focus on what their business issues are, because you'll never keep up with all of the different features.
Resumes, org charts, product workflows, and demo checklists are not the whole problem. They are symptoms of something deeper, the mental models that decide what hiring is supposed to be.
These are questions that have been out there for a while, and what does this look like? But transparently, I mean, I know I've seen it, I'm sure you have. It's not something that we've been able to answer as of yet, or people have been willing to go in and have that deeper conversation and dialogue. What do you think is preventing that?
When we sort of talk about change in this area, the first thing is we look at people's behavior. So, how are people behaving? If we can get them to behave in a different way, to do things in a different way, then that's going to be the change that we want. And then the people who go slightly deeper than that look at systems. So it's like, okay, actually the systems are driving the behavior. So we're going to change the systems, or change all the systems, the way that it works, that kind of thing. And then it just kind of goes back to where it was, and we don't get the change, and nothing happens. And I think the reason for that is behind all of this, there are mental models about how work works, how work's supposed to be, how recruiting works. And we never challenge those mental models. But it's not just about changing the system, it's about changing the thought process and the models that sit behind it.
The old stories are comfortable because everyone knows their part. The recruiter, the hiring manager, the candidate, the system, the checklist. But AI is exposing where those stories no longer hold. The work now is not to make the old process faster. It is to decide which assumptions still deserve to shape hiring and what vision is strong enough to replace the ones that do not. And while employers are still debating what to rebuild, candidates are already moving outside the walls of the old system.